Has power ever gotten in the way of you having a successful and satisfying relationship? Have you ever wondered how to acknowledge and address that power so that it no longer has a hold on how we relate with each other? And in other words, what's cooperative communication? Hi, I'm Nancy Shanteau, and I'm here to share with you about cooperative communication, an embodied, power-informed approach to co-creating our relationships by changing how we talk with each other. If you can see and hear me, please post in the comments and let me know. I'm going to wait until I get confirmation before we get started. And if you're watching this later, please type replay in the comments. I'll be putting y'all's comments on the screen during this broadcast. So if you prefer I don't show your comments, let me know that too. Looks like I'm live, so I would love to get a comment just to let me know I can be heard. I'm going to go check Facebook right now. It looks like I'm live, y'all. That's excellent. Okay. Oh, great. Hey. Thanks, Andrea. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You can correct me in the comments if you prefer your name pronounced differently. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So let me ask you again, has power ever gotten in the way of you having a successful and satisfying relationship? Have you ever wondered how to acknowledge and address power so that it no longer has a hold on how we relate with each other? So in other words, we're trying to figure out what is cooperative communication. How can we cooperate? That's what we're going to discover today. And the best way to do this is by taking each word individually and defining them. First, we need a definition of cooperation. In Skills for Change, we use the definition of cooperation from the Radical Therapy Collective. They define cooperation in the positive by asking for 100% of what you want, 100% of the time, and negotiating agreements. Obviously, this is semi-impossible. We kind of modify the 100% of the time by relevancy. Is it relevant to your dynamic? And also, you get to choose when you're sharing and when you're not. So in order for us to have our yes and our no internally, we need two things. We need sufficient power to protect ourselves, and we also need self-trust. And that translates into self-forgiveness if we make a mistake. So does this make sense so far? Let me know in the chat if this definition of cooperation resonates with you. And when we're thinking about cooperation, we're thinking about having enough power to share our 100% of what we want, to be able to say yes and no to what other people want, and to be able to create agreements that can let us move forward together. And we're doing that within the context of everybody having enough power to negotiate agreements so that our autonomy is the basis of our relationship rather than it being like somehow the agreement or our sense of equality is actually like we're perceiving each other as equal or we're perceiving somebody as having more power than us. We want that yes and no to be the distinction that lets us know that we can actually cooperate together. And we're definitely always operating in a context. So operating in a context means that we're thinking about how our social power and oppression, privilege and oppression is affecting our dynamics. And we're taking lots of different sources of power into account when we're negotiating our agreements. And we'll say that if we have our no, we have enough power to cooperate. And the art that we want to develop is our ability to identify sufficient power analysis so that when we're trying to cooperate with someone, we can actually negotiate how power shows up in our dynamics once we are cooperating. So hopefully this definition makes sense. If you're watching a recording of this, go ahead and put your comment in the chat and keep this conversation going. Okay, now let's define communication. This is a quote from Anne Morrow Lindbergh. She said, "Good communication is just as stimulating as black coffee and just as hard to sleep after." According to the Oxford English Dictionary, communication is defined as the imparting or exchanging of information through speaking, writing, or the use of some other medium, the successful conveying or sharing of ideas and feelings. In Skills for Change, we focus our attention on a transaction. It's a specific series of events. This can be a social interaction that occurs within a time frame. The reason we pay such close attention to a transaction is that when we are very specific about what happened between us, we can assess whether or not we liked our behavior and the outcome. If we want a different result, we can imagine a new behavior, a new outcome, and then practice the skills that are necessary to embody that change. This is the basis of our theory of how change happens, and it's extremely important because this is how we verify our success, both in imagining the change that we want and achieving it. The ingredients of a transaction are 1, observable facts. What happened during this specific moment in time? This might include actions, expressions, body language, words, and tone of voice, and you can imagine this is what a camera and a recording device would pick up. 2, we want our story-free feelings, our internal awareness of ourselves, including sensations and emotions. And 3, we want our stories. The stories we tell ourselves about other people might feature their motivations, thoughts, feelings, sensations, and their stories about us and themselves. And our stories about ourselves are going to be a feature as well. So Eric Berne founded transactional analysis. It's his idea to think about transactions as a site of change. He founded it in the mid-50s, was popularized with the publication of his book, Games People Play, which was published in 1964. So let's recap. So far, we've covered that cooperative communication involves autonomy-based, mutual agreements between 2 or more people who ask for their 100% of what they want 100% of the time and don't power play each other. So sometimes we need to clear the air about past unprocessed feelings and stories. And this process allows us to form a big picture story where you know what I experienced and told myself about what happened. And I know what you experienced and told yourself about what happened. Then we can create an analysis that helps each of us decide 100% of what we want. I made a graphic because graphics are fun. I wanted to show that when we're doing this, we're clarifying, asking, agreeing, and co-creating our relationships. So you can see clarify, analyze, ask, and agree here. And we're going around this circle with each other in order to make sure that we share that big picture story. So how does this idea of cooperation requiring us to be able to identify what happened, to bring our autonomy to a conversation? So we have our yes and our no, we have our 100%, and then we're able to talk about our observable facts, feelings, and stories, and listen to someone else's in order to start that process of negotiating. How does that feel to you in terms of a cooperative communication process? Like if we're going to really start to analyze power, we need to be able to identify what exactly happened. What stories did we have about what it meant? And how does that affect how we felt? So go ahead and put that in the chat if that feels resonant for you. Can you see the impact of this kind of communication could have on your relationships instead of engaging in power plays, secrets, lies, and rescues? And when I say rescues, I'm talking about when we do more than our share or more than we want to do, and we don't negotiate how power is impacting us. This is the most common kind of power play that happens between people who are well-intentioned, because we often will end up facing into scarcity or danger or some kind of competition. And in the face of that, do something extra. We'll try and do something to solve a problem. And in trying to do something to solve a problem, if we don't negotiate what that is, we can end up feeling overburdened and burnt out. We can end up feeling like we've lost power and we're not able to do extra. We're not able to do more than our share or more than we want to do, or even do any of what we want to do. We might then rebel, feel persecutory, anger, resentment, frustration, irritation, even rage, and then feel guilty for how we act those feelings out. And that can take us right back into overdoing again. So it's a common pattern for us to power play from a place of trying to solve a problem or fix it. So if this sounds familiar to you, okay, I see a comment from Sierra Ramirez. Hi, Sierra. I love the idea of a person not assuming they know what I mean. Yes. Yeah. Who wants to have people decide what they mean for you? It's not a fun experience. Go ahead and hide that comment. All right. So I wanted to give a couple of stories, and if you have any examples of a situation where you feel like power impacted your relationships, I'm happy to respond to a specific story and kind of do a quick analysis of it and how cooperative communication might help with that. I've been having several conversations with folks who are relating across power dynamics. So this might be a relationship with people who have a lot more structural power. So if we're defining structural power as the power of access to resources, shelter, all of the needs, all of those hierarchy of needs that are fundamental to survival. Structural power could also be being backed by systems. So somebody might have a great job. They might have social power, social and cultural power. And I'm going to talk, those kind of cross over, right? So structural power is usually about resources. They might also have cultural power. They might have more privilege than somebody they're relating with, or less privilege than someone they're relating with. They might be more oppressed. And when people are trying to share their 100% with each other across a conversation like that, it can often get into somebody feeling one down, somebody feeling like the other person has more of what they want than we have of what we want. Or I think it's less common for people to feel one up, to feel like they're getting everything that they want. Most of the time when people are actually getting everything they want, they're not necessarily tracking power. So feeling one down is a more common experience than feeling one up. And when we feel one down, we tend to feel like the only way we can get power is to win a negotiation. And if we win all of the negotiations, then, and even if the person who feels one down is winning all of the negotiations, they feel like they have to win the next one to have power. And that's a huge problem if we're trying to actually have a cooperative relationship, because the person who might have more structural or social power might be losing every transaction, or that person might be the person feeling one down and needing to win. So whomever feels like they need to win in order to have enough power will lose track of the fact that they're cooperating with somebody. Like, winning becomes how they feel equal. And I will talk about that as a situation where we're from going one down, we're ending up going one up. Like, we're taking more power than is necessary in order to try and feel equal in the relationship. So being able to actually name that there have been a series of transactions, these specific things happened, we're not actually trading off win-loses anymore. One person's getting a lot less of their 100%, and they're feeling very dissatisfied. That's an analysis that we could do in a cooperative relationship that could help us recognize that the one down move that the person is doing, where they feel like they don't have enough power, where they feel like they need to solve their problems by winning, that actually is affecting the dynamic. It's taking away the cooperation, and that person, we could actually try and increase their power in order to help them not go one down in the dynamic. So that's an example of how we might do a power analysis to help us cultivate cooperation in a relationship. So if you have an example you'd like me, like, it can even be, with a boss or with roommates. I'll give you a little bit of time to add a story if you have one. And while I'm waiting for, if you have any stories, I want to let you know we're doing a summer session of Cooperative Communication Practitioner Certification Program this summer. And the idea is to help people do power analysis, learn cooperative communication, become a practitioner, because even if we're not going to do this as our work, these skills are super potent in our workplace, in our community organizing. They're helpful in any kind of family situation, in any social relationships. I've used cooperative communication quite a bit in, I organize inside of my dance community, and I've used cooperative communication in those contexts quite a bit. It's a powerful tool to bring to help people. You know, if I'm asking for my 100% and you're asking for your 100%, and we can listen to each other's 100% and not take them personally, and not assume that because somebody asked, they automatically need to get it, and not because we asked, we automatically need to get it, but we can witness that each other's 100% are different. We start to analyze, we can think about what's in common between what I want and what you want. What are the differences between what I want and what you want? And what are the gaps? What are the things that you didn't mention or I didn't mention in my 100% that we can figure out whether or not that's in common or a difference? And then we can agree on the commonalities and start to identify what we're going to do about the differences. And we have lots of tools for how to get to cooperative agreements. I'm going to do 2 more talks this week, and one of the talks is going to be about negotiating agreements. I want to focus on solo folks who are trying to negotiate agreements with dealing with, couples privilege or something like that in their alternative relationship structures. So stay tuned. This is a 14-week program. We're going to explore how people can speak their truth, listen with compassion, and negotiate cooperative agreements to get more of what they want in their relationships. And we're going to get started. I just decided to start on June 16th. So on June 12th, I'm going to drop the first video, and then on June 16th, we're going to have our first call. There's a bonus call that's going to be on June 11th. So if you want to get access to the bonus call, we're going to do a process I call future mapping, where we're going to dream about how we want to use cooperative communication tools in our life. And for me, this is a lot about also if you feel oppressed in your work, this is a great way to get your work to align with your values. We're going to be kind of dreaming forward so that we can fuel all of our learning work together with that dream. And then, so we'll be doing a visualization, and it's not just a mental exercise, it's something that we can feel in our bodies. We talk about skills for change as being an embodied power analysis because we want to practice in our bodies the changes that we're looking to experience. And we feel power in our bodies, and we feel one down or disempowered in our bodies. So being able to identify what's happening and identify the practices that we want to do in order to make the change, or if what we want to do is stop being hard on ourselves, if something is not within our power to change, that can be super potent as well. And we're doing this within transactions, so we can actually get results because we figure out how to do something differently and then embody that. It's kind of a little summary of our change theory. So anyone who's interested, I want you to be able to align your work with your values and help you convey the skills of embodied power-informed relating to your community as a practitioner, facilitator, and teacher. And if you want more information, I'm going to put this link in the chat. And also, you can get on my email mailing list. I'll put that link, and I'm going to, I have empowerment sessions available, so I'll put that link as well. So there's going to be 3 links going into the chat. I'd love to get in touch with you if you're interested and talk about what it is that you want to experience and how cooperative communication might change your life. And this summer is a great time to, 35 hours, end of the summer, bam, got a new job possibility in front of you. And I know a lot of us would love to live doing work that really matters. I've been doing work like this since 2004. And my life is proof that you can align your work with your values and not spend 8+ hours a day doing something that doesn't really feel good. So the other talk, so I previewed, I'm going to talk about being solo and negotiating agreements with people who might have privilege. And I also am, so that's going to be Thursday, I think. And then I'm going to, Thursday at 3:10. And tomorrow at 11:10, I'm going to be talking about non-coercion and how it's a more likely to succeed approach than non-hierarchy. Non-hierarchy is something that we hear about in anarchist communities a lot, and the idea is to get rid of role being in the of power being in the role, and to situate it in the collaborative collective. We want to be able to do that, and we're oftentimes unable to make power go away. And people can get confused about how to do non-hierarchy when power is present. And so non-coercion, figuring out how to not power play, is crucial for people to know that they're actually operating in a non-hierarchical way. So I hope those 2 talks will be interesting to you. I'd love to see you there. If you have any questions, I can hang out for another minute or so and maybe give another example. Let's see. I like to talk about dance, and one of the things that happens in partner dance. So I do a partner dance called Partner Fusion. And one of the things that happens in traditional partner dance is that somebody is designated as the lead and somebody is designated as the follow. I really feel like the queer community started asking for those roles to be able to switch. So somebody could either dance lead or follow. And we started seeing people going from lead to follow seamlessly within their dance, making switches back and forth really easily. And I like to explore the idea that even in a single moment, you could be both, instead of thinking of it as trying to invest it in a role, you could be extending invitations and receiving invitations at the same time. Because we're in bodies, in space, we actually can make an invitation with one hand and respond to an invitation with our hips or something like that. And so if that's happening, it's really hard to tell who has the power. It's really hard to tell who's in charge. And so we have this amazing expression of nonverbal cooperation where we're both just responding to invitations and giving invitations, right? So we're making invitations and then we're receiving those invitations and making a response. And inside of doing that, there's a lot of dynamic play that can happen. And so this is a great way for us to practice doing a negotiation in real time without words and having this nonverbal communication. So one of the things that becomes a problem if somebody doesn't know that you like to play in this way is that somebody who's used to leading can kind of grip your hand. And I don't like having my hand gripped. In the cooperative dance that we do, we like to do what we call open-handedness. So we're making invitations and receiving invitations without gripping. And we can just continue to ask for that person to stop gripping. And if it's a habit, they might not be able to stop. I've got a comment. So anyways, when we can't change what we're doing, there's this interesting thing that happens where we have to bring our awareness to the moment of gripping before we can stop gripping. So we might have the great idea that we don't want to be controlling somebody else, but we might have it as an embodied habit. I'm going to put this comment up. It's a great comment from Sierra. Okay. One thing you've talked about is learning how to emotionally regulate after dealing with years of trauma so that people can be capable of cooperation without blowing up or being super defensive and to get out of being one down. Would love to hear you talk more about that and how cooperative communication can be used to support families with children. Great. So I'm going to do this in 2 parts. The first part is when people blow up, the likelihood is that they feel attacked. The defensiveness is because they feel like somebody is taking something away from them or asking for something that will be a loss for them. And that if, you know, of course, I'm not talking about power play relationships or abusers or people who are deliberately manipulative. But if somebody is feeling defensive, it might be because they're afraid that somebody is going to try and control them, which I would actually see as a one down move. And being able to actually have enough self-regulation, enough emotional regulation to create space inside of ourselves so that we're not actually reacting to what somebody else is asking for, but actually knowing that I can hear what you're asking for. I can mirror it back to you, and I can say what I want and get it mirrored back to me. And then we can coexist in the contradiction together if there is one. That knowledge that that's even possible can make that one down move that happened that causes the defensive angry reactions or the loss of regulation. It can actually create some space. In order to do that, we actually have to practice. And when trauma is present, we're often responding to history, and we're responding to feelings of powerlessness. And being able to, I like to go through a transaction and see if I can find the moment of powerlessness, the moment where the feeling of powerlessness arrived. And then the person thought, oh, I'm going to lose something, or this isn't going to go how I want. Because that moment of awareness opens up into a moment of choice. And there's lots of practices for creating self-regulation. I think in order to even be able to do those practices, we have to have some hope that we can get there. And the transaction analysis helps us do that. This is very odd how it's showing this comment, so I'm going to hide it for a second. Okay. I use body practices for self-regulation for myself. I like to help people make a menu of options. I also, oftentimes when people are wanting to self-regulate, there's a lot of internal and maybe external pressure. And we try and add compassion to that. So whatever's happening, whatever embodied habitual response, and often trauma responses are actually responses that are they're not evidence of something being broken. They're evidence of something working and then trying to guard us from danger. So we're trying to actually figure out where the moment of choice is, which is where is the moment of awareness, and what can we do to actually open ourselves physically back up to center, like returning to a recovered state. And I often find that people will pressure their upper body a lot. Like I need to take a breath, or I need to relax. And they're living in this kind of tense forward, very tight shape. And if we want to do an intervention of coming back to center or recovering, often our extremities are really helpful. So being able to wiggle fingers and toes, or even notice that we have fingers and toes. Our back body can be helpful. It can be a resource. Weight shifts, shifting forward or back or side to side. And sometimes we feel a lot of pressure to relax, like, tense, and I feel overwhelmed, and I'm trying to make myself relax. What if you let yourself increase it a little bit, like just a little increase, squeeze a little bit extra, and then let go from there. So hopefully we can find a path back to center from there. I call those micro interventions. So we have lots of tools. There's lots and lots and lots of somatic tools. I like to help people figure out what's happening and create a menu item of things that work sometimes. And then we need to train it. We need to train it into that moment. I've had a lot of success with this with folks, especially as we add compassion. And being able to find that moment of choice and invite our attention to that moment of choice and take away pressure, add compassion, that usually makes more space right there. So just as a starting point, we talk about accepting the unacceptable as a way to add compassion. And then from there, what is the choice? What's 100% of what you want? And how would you practice embodying that? So we do a little bit of an intellectual exercise, then we do some physical exercise to come back in our bodies to recovered, centered presence. And then from there, we're figuring out what's 100% and what do we need to practice in order to train that into our bodies so that we can make that happen more quickly. I hope that addressed that question, Sierra. You said I love that, so I hope that's true. And then how do you apply this to families and children? My teacher, Julia Kelleher, and she wrote a book that has a lot of examples called Access to Power. I co-wrote it, and really it helped bring that book into the world. And there are quite a few examples of parent-child relationships. There's a chapter called Empowered Transactions in Access to Power. And she talks about what happens when power is equal. How do we make transactions? And what I was talking about, what cooperative communication is how, we're operating from relatively equal power. What happens when power is unequal? And there's a couple other examples, but the children, parents and children, the power is unequal. Beth Roy, one of the Radical Therapy Collective members, also wrote a book called Parents' Lives, Children's Needs, which I found really helpful. She actually goes through life stages developmentally for children and talks about how you can negotiate at different ages with kids. I think one of the keys to working between parents and kids is to acknowledge that the power is unequal and that kids are trying to get power. We will often think about, like, why aren't kids cooperating? When I think it's more like, why would they? Why would they cooperate? Why aren't they trying to advocate for their own power? And how can we transmit appropriate amounts of power to them at their age level, and also, reveal our own 100% with them. So we will talk about how we'll end up with these hybrid negotiations where we might not have full collaboration in a relationship. We might have some hierarchy. Parent-child relationships are a great example of a relationship that has embedded differences in power. And yet, if we still are focusing on 100%, we can delegate cooperation into certain transactions with kids, and we can figure out a list of age-appropriate transactions to give them power in. And by doing that, increase the cooperative nature of the dynamic. I've worked with tons and tons and tons of parents over the course of my career. And, one of the first things I try to find out is, what do the kids want? And most of the time they have answers. They do want things. And oftentimes that information hasn't even been gathered yet. So once we figure out what kids want, then we're figuring out what are age-appropriate ways that they can get what they want, and also acknowledge their parents' wants as legitimate, instead of as, the parents just being either the giver of the thing that's wanted and or the controller of the boundary, so that we can move away from a power over dynamic with parents and children and toward a power with dynamic where the power is being more negotiated, and we're also making it transparent. Like, I can negotiate that transaction, but I can't negotiate this one. Or if we start power playing each other, there's going to be these natural consequences that are going to happen. Because Julia Kelleher has been working in Nevada County here in California for 35 plus years, and I've been working, I'm getting close to my 19th anniversary in this county. There's tons of people who have grown up with skills for change in their lives, from children to being adults. Some of the folks I've trained are actually in that group. And to watch children who are trained to ask for 100% of what they wanted, knowing how to use their power, knowing how to negotiate, knowing how to accept the unacceptable, to transact power over, like, we can negotiate this, we can't negotiate that, and then watching them have those skills in their lives later, and looking around at their peer network and going, how come I have these skills and nobody else has these skills? It's been pretty amazing, seeing people in their 30s negotiating with their parents who took them to their first mediation when they were 8 or something like that. So we have lots of stories and proven examples of Skills for Change working really well in helping parents and children create a more values-aligned dynamic, especially for those of us who would rather not be dominating or power playing people. If we really value our autonomy and value the autonomy of others, then we end up with a situation in which needing tools in order to understand how to share power with people or how to, operate around power is super potent and relieving. Thanks for those 2 great questions, Sierra. Appreciate you. All right, well, I need to complete. I'm sorry about the broadcast error earlier, and I will make a snippet out of this video, and then when I post this video, I'll clean up a version, probably not the Facebook one, but I'll clean up a version on YouTube or something like that. So, oh, Kimberly, you're here. Kimberly says, I found a combination of Skills for Change and relationship anarchy principles to be helpful with parenting. Yeah, there's a lot of folks who are practitioners. Kimberly is a cooperative communication practitioner and also training as a Skills for Change coach. And there's folks who have a lot of parenting experience who are working in the community. I'll put a link to the practitioners page as well when I finally get those links into the chat. Sorry, I didn't do that. I got distracted, but I'll do that. I have to get out of this room, but I'll do that after I get back to my desk. So thank you so much for being here. If you're interested, so if you really want to find me, you can find me at nancyshanteau.com, and just keep your notifications on for this post, and I will post information in the chat. You should get a notification about that. Thanks very much, everyone. I hope you have a great day. Let's, use our power wisely and well.